So as we continue up the stack, that means we now come to the application layer. And we have, before we start the application layer session, we have a sponsor, Michael Schapira from Compira Labs. Are you there, sir?
Hi. Yes.
There we go. We'll need your video. So there's your slide, sir. Please tell us about yourselves and why you've sponsored.
So hi, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Michael Schapira, and I'm the co-founder and chief scientist of Compira Labs. I want to sort of give you a very high-level overview of what we do. As you well know, CDNs strive to provide excellent quality of experience to their users. The issue is that even though we employ clever caching policies and sophisticated video encoding schemes and load balancing and so on and so forth, there's always the last mile. And by this, I mean all the network segments interconnecting the content at CDN edge nodes and the end users. And this is often a volatile, chaotic network over which there's a lot of competition with other services. Some of the network segments themselves, like 5G and LTE, are themselves challenging. And this is actually the crucial reason for bad quality of experience. It's the inability to take advantage of this network for the purpose of providing good quality of experience. And the issue that we're tackling is that the mechanisms for content delivery over the last mile, and by this I mean either classical TCP or newer mechanisms like BBR, are one size fits all. They don't care what application is running on top, whether it's VOD or video streaming, even though naturally these require very different things from the network. And also they can't customize to different network environments, say 5G versus wired. And this is where we come in. So what we do is we customize the way that rate is controlled at CDN edge nodes, the rate at which packets are injected into the network, in a way that is both customized to the service running on top, to the type of content being delivered, and to the specific geographical region, specific class of users, mobile versus wired, and so on. And to this end, we employ machine learning techniques. This is a seamless upgrade. All you need to do is install a software-only element plugin at the edge node. You can dramatically improve quality of experience. We're already working with some of you, and I look forward to chatting with others. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Right, Tim, over to you, sir.
Yeah, hey, Dom. That was actually a really great session, the last presentation that Eric gave. And Michael, thanks for the brief overview of your company. We've got two other panelists today. Let's see, Stan, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself, just tell a little bit about your time in the industry.
Hello, everybody. Is it okay with?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. So briefly about myself. My entire career was television, and I was involved in diverse areas over there. So I was involved in production films and shows, as well as the organization of terrestrial and satellite broadcasting in OTT streaming in Eastern Europe. And having moved to the United States a few years ago, I continue to work here on TV in the OTT market, and my partners and me, we are bringing several startups on the international market. And one of these startups is headed by me. This briefly, what we are doing, this unique system for obtaining accurate information about the audience's perception of an audiovisual product. We do our research and even predictions based on the remotely collected micro impulse movements of viewers' hands if they agree to hold their smartphones while watching visual content.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm going to stop you there. That's fascinating.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm going to go on to Xavier. So Xavier, Broadpeak, of course, was mentioned earlier. So you don't really need to talk about the company, but just tell me a little bit about yourself and your time in the industry.
Okay.
Yep. It's nice to hear, Broadpeak being mentioned. We've been very active recently. Maybe a little bit about myself. So I've been in video for quite a few years now, probably 17, 18 years. Been eating CDN for breakfast for about 15 years, right? Worked for companies like Akamai, worked for Alcatel-Lucent, for Nokia, and for the last two and a half years for Broadpeak. So I've seen a lot of video being delivered over the years, and my expertise is very much on network and content delivery, obviously.
So we're talking about layer 4 and above, and I'll start with you, Xavier. What can CDNs do when they sort of go into that space?
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic, isn't it, Tim? Right? We're looking at going beyond the traditional layers of CDN, so looking into a little deeper into the transport, the session, the application of CDN. And there's one thing that resonates with me in this topic is the fact that customers today, when they look at a Broadpeak CDN, they like this idea of having a session-aware CDN, right? So not all CDNs are session-aware. And what is interesting with the session-aware CDN is you are very much in this, layer 4 level, right? Trying to, provide additional intelligence to the people using it so that the experience at the end can be better. So when you look at this session awareness, I think there are 3 topics that very much drive people towards, this, higher value of CDN. I think the first one is better analytics, right? So being able to drill down to individual sessions, right? Knowing what's happening in real time on your CDN down to one individual session. So if you have issues, you can see it in real time and see what's happening. I think that's the first one. And the second one is being able to manipulate those sessions, right? Decide, for example, that a TCP stack is going to be better suited for a given session than another, right? I think that's an interesting one. And also sometimes being able to adapt bit rates, right? Saying, if the network is congested and we want to drop, the highest bit rate. So being able to act on those sessions becomes important. And I think the third one, and something that is gaining a lot of traction as we speak, is security through the CDN, right? Knowing in real time how many sessions are linked to your account, similar to your Netflix account. If you have, more than 5 people logged at the same time with your account, there's something probably, happening with your account. Having this knowledge in real time is becoming more important. So yeah, I would say better analytics, being able to manipulate those sessions, and then look into security.
Okay. And obviously things like anomaly detection that you described. So Michael, you all work sort of in that session manipulation space. What do you see that CDNs can do when they go layer 4 and above?
So I think specifically the area that I've been focusing on in the past decade or so is trying to inject intelligence into the transport layer. I think that to a large extent, we're still shackled to the one-size-fits-all paradigm, right? Where we're basically using the same mechanisms across different applications, across different network environments. And I think that there's really 2 aspects to this. One is gaining visibility into what's going on. That is, even if we have some visibility, say through Conviva data or Men at Work into quality of experience metrics at the video client, it's very hard to figure out what's actually going on without correlating that to very fine-grained statistics about the network performance. That is, what is it that's happening right at the transport layer? And to that end, you need to sort of open these black boxes that we have, right? And export the statistics to some central module. But as I mentioned before, I think that even more profoundly, there's the issue of actually being able to use different recipes in different environments, right? As live streaming wants very different things from the network than VOD, right? The way that we perceive throughput and loss and latency in these contexts can't be the same. And so you wouldn't expect the same recipe to perform equally well, right, across these different domains. Same goes for volatile networks like 5G versus wired environments. I think that's sort of where we are at.
Okay, good. And then Stan, the really sort of fascinating research you're doing there and statistics, how do those play up into CDNs as they offer some of these services?
CDNs is a source of data, but the data CDN provide through open caching that we just discussed before could be just general, and some and people from creative side, those who are decision makers in what kind of content should be shown on the platform, sometimes they do not precisely understand how to deal with this data. Considering that, we suggest research of this data by using our system, because actually we explain to creative side how they should treat the data they can obtain from CDN opportunities.
Okay, interesting. So, Michael, you're working in that sort of last mile part. What are some of the alternative approaches to rate control at edge nodes for CDNs?
So I think when you look at the innovation in this area, then we have, so naturally we have all these different flavors of TCP, right? And the traditional protocols we all grew up on that sure. that have been used for a while. I think that in terms of innovation from recent years, the two dominant paradigms are BBR, that is was introduced by Google and sort of leverages aggregate statistics about performance to try to hit the optimal operating point. And another approach that I'm clearly biased, but was developed by my team at Hebrew and researchers at the University of Illinois, is performance-oriented congestion control, which is sort of leveraging online learning machinery in this context. And online learning is very natural to use in this context because you're sort of, online learning is about a decision maker making decisions in the face of extreme uncertainty, which I would argue is exactly what's going on here. You're adapting the rate, there's a very complex last mile network, and you still want to get provable guarantees for fairness and convergence and performance. I think these are sort of the main paradigms that are now, you can now contrast.
Okay, good. So Xavier, when we're looking at things like workflows and integrating into CDNs, how do customers create workflows to optimize and prioritize their video delivery across the CDN?
Yeah, that's a topic, isn't it? How can I optimize my video delivery, knowing that it is quite a complex world, right? What Michael was just describing before. I think one tool that is really important in this, right? And Michael was talking about different TCP algorithm, is to leverage A/B testing, right? So the ability to test a specific parameter or different TCP stack, for example, on one part of the network, and then work out that maybe my TCP algorithm works better on my fixed line network than on my 4G or 5G network, right? And then I can tweak this and make sure that I have the right results. So I think leveraging A/B testing is really important, and this is where a lot of customers are asking for some of our help. We talked about better analytics. This is where there is something here to do together. I think beyond that, we're opening some new ways of dealing with ABR, dealing with congestion. One thing we've introduced at Broadpeak over the last 12 months is this idea of taking control of the ABR streaming server side when the conditions are getting really bad, right? So the example I usually give, it's a bit like the ABS on your car, right? If you brake too hard, then the car will actually do the braking for you because there is a danger and you want to avoid it. It's a similar thing here, right? If you get too many users turning up at the same time, for example, on a mobile network, it's really hard to know where your users are going to be at a given time, right? They might decide to get together, and overwhelm a part of the network. If you see that, your network won't have enough capacity, what you want to do is automatically decide to introduce a policy that says, look, for this particular stream, there's this very popular stream, everybody's watching it, I'm not going to deliver it in HD anymore. I'm going to stick to, standard definition, so I know I can serve more people in this congested area until the load, drops again, and then I can go back to normal. But for a short period of time, is basically the CDN that drives the decisions, right? And we think this is an interesting step forward because Doing it across all the devices, makes sense if it gets congested, but you can come up with something even more granular than that, right? You could decide, for example, that a premium customer watching, the football on its, I don't know, Apple TV 4K is somehow more important than a basic user watching a standard stream, maybe an SVOD, part of an SVOD package onto an iPad. So you could decide to apply, you could decide where the congestion is going to be applied first, right? If you don't have enough network or CDN capacity, you could decide that you want to protect the 4K, premium experience and see the other streams being degraded. So it's opening some interesting conversations. Obviously, net neutrality plays in, and there are some, good conversation to have. But I think this is where we can add more logic and workflows in the CDN today to basically optimize the delivery, go beyond what's done today.
And just to clarify for the audience, what we're not talking about here is any form of deep packet inspection. What we're essentially talking about here is business decisioning around premium content or premium endpoints versus non-premium endpoints to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's correct, Tim. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
All right, got it. So, Michael, for where you're working on the last mile, what's the practical implication for somebody who's trying to put their video delivery workflow together? As Xavier was saying, at some point there's the CDN in control of saying, hey, maybe if you reduce down, we can get better delivery through. But in reality, every content owner wants to provide their video through at the best possible quality for, the maximal quality at the given screen. So from your perspective at the last mile, how would somebody work to optimize their workflow?
So I think this very much relates to what Xavier was talking about. That is that at the application layer, we're doing all sorts of things with adaptive bitrate algorithms and prioritizing different sessions to ensure that data is being delivered smoothly. But it can only be delivered smoothly if the network is providing smooth delivery. So these mechanisms are in effect reactive, right? I can request HD if I see that my chunks are being downloaded fast. But if the network isn't performing well, then there is an issue, right, that can't be resolved at the application layer. So I think in that sense, part of the workflow that's complementary to what Xavier was mentioning before is replacing the mechanisms we have now with something that can actually provide the best view of the network to the application layer running on top. And this has a lot of consequences because there's a lot of things we want from these mechanisms. We want video to start playing fast. We want the quality to be as high as possible. We don't want to experience rebuffering and so on. And that means there's a very delicate play here that you want the mechanisms to make the best use of the network, but never overshoot, right, intuitively. And this is, I think, where a lot of the intelligence can be injected into these mechanisms.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You don't want to overcapacity. You want it to be right.
Exactly. And once you have that in place, you're basically affecting the quality of experience because now the latency is low. Now you can request HD in a smooth and constant way, and then there's a lot of things that one can do, as Xavier was mentioning.
And that's a beautiful pitch to the panel I'm doing in about an hour and a half around quality of service, quality of experience. So thank you.
Tune in. Thanks.
So Stan, with the research you do around audience preferences, what should a content provider know as they're sort of trying to optimize their content and their delivery across the CDN? It's interesting to see you're sort of dealing with beyond the last mile, you're dealing with the end user themselves and doing that research. So what learnings come out of that?
First of all, there is a general learning that probably the whole television development through the years that technology was going faster than content development. And in previous years, those guys who were responsible for content, they'll look at the technology as advanced means, nothing else. And that was the problem, and I think it is that there should be a bridge between those guys who deal with modern technologies like CDN or guys from creative side. And this bridge is very important because the guys from creative side sometimes look at that, they didn't understand all the opportunities that appears with such things like open caching, such things like um, other computing services that exist nowadays on the market. Some people on the creative side still think that they put their content in some centralized source. But CDN is decentralized mean. So it means that it has absolutely another principle of distributing. And that's why some people from creative side they do not understand that that fragmentation of audience we face all. We face great fragmentation, not only from region to region, but from age to age, from some. So it's never ever have been before this kind of fragmentation, and all these fragments of audience they need to be studied. So those guys who involved in technology and who answering your question, they should know that they have lots of statistics, lots of very valuable information, and but to analyze that information, they need some old school sociological means like we have. Yes, but we have software which make it easy, almost on the go. So it's not advertising of our system. It's just explaining how we came to the conclusion that we need that the market needed. So CDN guys, I believe, guys who deal with that, they should understand that they are a little bit underestimated by creative side of management of any platform, and should describe more and explain more what opportunities CDN and other modern achievement could bring to the creative side.
A couple of really good points there. I'm going to come to those in a minute, but let me go to Xavier and ask a question. So, you've heard as we've talked through the day the idea of
from the beginning,
the idea of CDNs to hybrid CDNs, which would become eCDNs, or CDNs tying in sort of with ISPs and putting caching there, like the Squid Game thing. So Xavier, I know you and I talked about a solution that you all have put together in Italy. Talk a little bit about how the local ISPs, sort of come into play on this beyond even the CDN delivering content, where you've got ISPs needing to be able to guarantee delivery through.
Yeah, this is a big topic, right? I mean, when we look at it today, delivering content, especially live content through the global CDN today remains a challenge. If you want to do it at scale, 4K, low latency, millions of streams at the same time, it remains a challenge, right? So when we look at it, there's basically one place where there are assets that can be leveraged, and that's within the ISP, right? What we've been discussing before, open caching and putting local capacity. And we've actually done something very exciting recently with Telecom Italia. In Italy, we basically deployed a multicast ABR platform. Okay, so the idea is to leverage multicast to do your streaming, to deliver your live sports over the network. So Telecom Italia primarily purchased this platform to deliver their own content. So they are, a service provider, a video service provider with a traditional sort of Android TV set-top box. But where it gets interesting here is the fact that they have opened the system to DAZN, right, to the OTT streamer, live OTT streamer DAZN. So live football in Italy can be delivered on the Telecom Italia network by leveraging this multicast network. And this is where the paradigm is changing, right? We're not bound by, peering capacity or how much, bandwidth there is available to get into Telecom Italia's network, but it's simply, leveraging the multicast capacity, right? So in terms of capacity itself, it's pretty much unlimited, right? You have the network basically distributing the content rather than seeing the CDN servers. And I think this is where the openness, and this is where what Eric was mentioning before, the ability to go and find this capacity, because if it's well configured and if it's designed the way it should be designed, then it should perform really well, right? Whether it's open caching with unicast or the multicast ABR example I've given you here, to me, it's the same thing. It's delivering. How do I deliver the content in the best possible way? And I think here we're turning very much a corner in the industry where we start to see OTT platforms that are not quite OTT anymore. They're not really over the top. They more or less through the middle, working with the ISP. And I think this is a very interesting model, right? We see more and more live premium content being only available on streaming. Is the case with football with DAZN. If you want to watch, the top football in Italy, the soccer, you have to get a subscription with DAZN. It's not available on broadcast anymore. And I think, this is going to drive basically a transformation of the ISP networks into smart pipes, where we're going to be able to leverage, new technologies, what Michael is doing, what Stan is doing as well. And, it's going to open up some, fresh new opportunities here.
Good. And can I put a plug in for the ebook that you sent me last week? Is that available for people to download off your website?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, so we've basically decided to work with an analyst in the UK called Paolo Pescatore to look at the state of delivering live sports over IP. Where are the challenges? What's working today? What's been happening over the last year or so? And yes, this ebook is now available on the website. Go to broadpeak.tv to download it. And there are a couple of videos as well where we dress up as sports as athletes, as football players, and you might enjoy some of that too. It's all about looking at where the challenges are today. There's a lot about low latency. There's a lot about capacity, but put into what I hope is a digestible format.
Good. Michael, speaking of latency, we've got just a couple minutes left here, but as you're looking to do this optimization toward the closer and closer to the consumer, how do things like multicast and low latency come into play? I mean, we talk about old technologies. Multicast has been around for years and years, but clearly, obviously, never really implemented, with the exception of mobile platforms.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because we have various technologies out there that are supposed to provide lower latency. And it's really a question of what you have control over, right? So for instance, in the case of multicast, if you're in control of the network itself, right, then you can do remarkable things, right? Which I think is what Xavier was alluding to before. A lot of times though, you're at the edge, and you're basically injecting data into a network over which you have very little, if any, control, right? And I think that this is where a lot of today's latency-related problems lie, that we have mechanisms like CMAF and so on that are supposed to provide lower latency, but these really rely on the assumption that I won't get to the situation where the client buffer is empty, right? And I experience rebuffering. So we need to sort of combine all these different mechanisms at the transport layer and the application layer to sort of provide smooth data delivery. And on top of that, being able to reduce the size of the client buffer and to employ techniques like CMAF if we want latency to eventually be low.
Right. Fair.
The safety net we have there at the client buffer, right, is probably the #1 reason for high latency in a lot of cases, but it actually serves a really useful purpose.
It's there for a reason, right?
How that work, right?
All right. And then one final question, and Stan, I'm going to point you to a Q&A question in the chat, if you don't mind answering around the question about the disconnect between creative and tech. But I'm going to throw this question open to all of you. We've seen a number of CDNs, as they're looking for value-added services, look at security as an offering. How important is that for CDN to offer security offerings, and is that a growth market, in the next couple of years?
I think it's very important, because you know that the main enemy of success in this market is piracy.
Sure.
So I believe that any tries to any secure system that helps to avoid the copying, avoid the stealing the data, avoid all these things that help people fight to piracy is very important. So it's obvious.
All right, sounds good. Xavier, 30 seconds, and then I'll come back to Michael to close.
Yeah, so if you look at the CDN market today, right, the large sort of global CDN providers, the growth, the ones that are generating a lot of money are the ones providing the CDN, the security services, right? I mean, it was just the Q3 results announced last week of many CDN providers. Go and have a look, but it's definitely a growth market for CDN. And going forward, we see that with ISPs, right? We see a lot of them looking into things like server-side watermarking, being able to basically add additional security to the CDN. So yes, 100%.
Okay. And Michael, last word.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have much to contribute. I fully agree with what the previous panelist said. Security is sort of an obvious thing you need to build on top of pretty much everything today, and CDNs are no exception.
And I will put a plug in. We actually just last Friday launched a secure broadcast and streaming workflows survey. So if anybody would like to, please go take that survey. You can find that at streamingmedia.com. Thank you to our panelists. Dom, I'm going to hand it back to you because you have the ability to do the spotlight to everybody.
Yeah, I do indeed. Thanks, Tim. So let's say goodbye to you first because you're back on later. So nice one, Tim. Thanks very much, as always. And Stan, thank you very much. Give us a wave. Much appreciated. Great insights. And Xavier, you're next. Give us a wave. Nice one. Thanks very much. Michael, not only do you get a wave, but you get a big thanks from me for your sponsorship as well. It's always very welcome and critical to keeping the show rolling. So much appreciated.